Welcome, listeners. Tonight, we journey into the shadows, into a world where the boundary between reality and nightmare blurs. Are you ready to delve into the unknown? A place where whispers turn to screams and the dark corners of our mind take shape. Listen closely, for this story is not for the faint of heart. In the small, forgotten town of Ashmore, stories clung to the old, abandoned house on the hill like ivy to stone. Locals called it the Ashen House, a monument to tragedy, a beacon of fear. It had stood for over 60 years, untouched since the night it burned, the night when the Dalton family met a fiery, mysterious end. The house was left standing, though hollowed out by the flames, walls blackened, floors reduced to charred remains, and its interior eternally cloaked in shadow and ash. No one knew what truly happened that night. Some whispered it was an accident, a tragic mishap with a candle. Others believed it was more than mere flames, a curse, a malevolent force. There were rumors of cults and forbidden rituals, of voices that sang from the depths of the fire, calling out names with promises of eternal life. But as the years passed, the whispers grew quieter, replaced by silence. Yet, the houses remained, looming over the town like a dark sentinel. The children of Ashmore, however, never forgot. They made dares to approach the house, to touch its scorched walls, to peer through the broken windows. Those who ventured close claimed to hear things, soft murmurs in the winds, ghostly figures moving behind the boarded windows, eyes watching from the shadows. And so, the legend of the Ashen House grew, fueled by the fear it instilled in anyone who dared to listen to its whispers. It was on one such moonless night that four friends, Megan, Alex, Jamie, and Ryan, stood at the edge of the property. They were young, reckless, and searching for a thrill to break the monotony of their quiet lives. The Ashen House had become a symbol of their boredom, a dark mystery begging to be unraveled. And tonight, it would be. "Come on, it's just an old house," Ryan said, trying to mask his nerves with bravado. "We go in, take a look around, and come back out. Easy." Megan was the most hesitant. She glanced at the others, her eyes wide, reflecting the faint glimmer of moonlight. What if the stories are true? What if there's something in there? Her voice trembled slightly, though she tried to sound skeptical. "There's nothing in there but old ash and burnt wood," Alex replied, though even he sounded unsure. "We're doing this to prove we're not scared. It's just a dare, nothing more." The others nodded, though their resolve was quickly fading the closer they got to the house. But a dare was a dare, and pride wouldn't allow them to back down now. Alex stepped forward first, pushing open the rusted gate with a loud creak. Megan, Jamie, and Ryan followed, the air around them growing colder as they approached the house. A chill swept through them, not just from the cold night, but from something deeper, something ancient and malevolent. The porch sagged under their weight as they climbed the steps. The door, scorched and rotted, stood slightly ajar, as if inviting them in. With a deep breath, Alex pushed it open, and they stepped inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the scent of soot and decay. Their footsteps echoed on the charred floorboards, the sound hollow and ominous in the silence. The beam of Megan's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing the remains of what was once a living room furniture reduced to skeletal forms, walls streaked with soot, and the ceiling sagging from years of neglect. Dust motes danced in the air, disturbed by their presence. They moved cautiously, each room more haunting than the last. The kitchen was a blackened shell, its counters and cabinets covered in layers of ash. In the dining room, the table was set as if frozen in time. Plates and utensils melted and twisted into grotesque shapes. The sight made Jamie shiver, the air growing colder with each step they took. "I hate this place," Megan whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of their own breathing. "It's like it's watching us." "Don't be ridiculous," Ryan said, though his voice lacked conviction. "It's just an old, burned-down house. There's nothing here." But as they moved further in, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of their vision, shapes that flickered just beyond the reach of the light. And then they heard it, the whisper. Soft at first, like the rustling of leaves in the wind, then growing louder, more distinct. A voice, low and mournful, began to weave through the darkness. It seemed to come from all around them, echoing off the walls, sliding through the air. They couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable, pleading, despairing, angry. The house as it was speaking to them. "Did you hear that?" Jamie's voice cracked as he looked at the others, his face pale. "Tell me you heard that." Megan nodded, her hand tightening around the flashlight. "It's coming from below us," she whispered, her eyes drawn to the floor beneath their feet. The basement. They all knew it, though none dared to say it out loud. The basement was where the fire had started, where the family was last seen. It was the heart of the house, the source of its whispers. They stood at the top of the basement stairs, staring into the darkness below. The air that wafted up from the depths was colder, carrying with it the stench of mold and something else, something metallic and sharp. Blood. The smell of blood mixed with ash. It made Megan gag, her hand covering her mouth as the others exchanged frightened glances. "We have to go down," Alex said, his voice barely a whisper. "We have to know what's down there." Megan shook her head violently, tears brimming in her eyes. "No, we don't. We need to leave. Now." But Ryan was already stepping forward, his jaw set, his eyes fixed on the darkness below. "We can't leave until we know what's causing this," he said, though his voice shook with fear. "We came this far. We have to finish it." One by one, they descended the stairs, each step creaking loudly in the oppressive silence. The whispers grew louder as they went down, filling their ears with a cacophony of voices. Some were weeping, others screaming, and still others spoke in a language none of them recognized, a guttural, ancient tongue that sent chills down their spines. At the bottom of the stairs, the flashlight illuminated a large, open space. The basement was vast, larger than they had expected, its walls lined with shelves covered in dust and debris. But it was the center of the room that drew their eyes, that held them captive in horror. A circle was burned into the floor, charred and blackened, surrounded by symbols that twisted and coiled in the darkness. Symbols that seemed to move and writhe as they stared at them. In the center of the circle was a pile of ashes, undisturbed, as if it had been placed there deliberately. Jamie stumbled back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. What? What is this? He choked out, his eyes wide with terror. Megan's flashlight flickered, and for a brief moment, the room was plunged into darkness. When the light returned, they saw its shapes moving in the shadows, figures rising from the ashes. The whispers grew deafening, filling their heads, drowning out their thoughts. The figures took shape, forming into people, their bodies twisted and burnt, their eyes glowing with an unnatural fire. They reached out to the four friends, their mouths opening in silent screams, their hands clawing at the air. Megan screamed, dropping the flashlight as she stumbled backward. Alex grabbed her arm, pulling her back, but the figures advanced, their movements slow and deliberate, their eyes fixed on the intruders. "We need to get out of here," Ryan shouted, his voice barely audible over the screams that filled the room. He turned, racing up the stairs, the others close behind him. The whispers followed them, growing louder, more frantic, as if the house itself was trying to pull them back.
They burst out of the basement, slamming the door behind them. But the house was alive now. The walls shook, the floorboards groaned, and the temperature plummeted. Frost formed on the windows, the glass cracking under the pressure. The whispers turned to screams, agonized, guttural screams that filled the air. "We have to get out," Jamie yelled, grabbing the front door handle and yanking it. It didn't budge. The house was sealing them in, trapping them within its decaying embrace. Megan fell to her knees, clutching her head as the whispers invaded her mind. She could hear them clearly now, the voices of the dead, the ones who had perished in the fire. They were calling to her, begging her to stay, to join them. Alex rushed to her side, shaking her. "Megan, snap out of it. We have to go." But she was lost in the whispers, her eyes unfocused, her lips moving silently as if in prayer. Ryan grabbed a chair, swinging it at the window, but the glass held firm, as if reinforced by some unseen force. "What the hell is this place?" he screamed, his voice filled with desperation. The shadows around them moved, coalescing into forms twisted, monstrous figures with eyes that glowed like embers in the dark. They reached for the group, their hands clawing at the air, their mouths opening in soundless howls. And then, a voice, louder than the others, spoke from the darkness. It was deep, guttural, and filled with a malice that chilled them to their core. "One must stay." The words echoed through the house, vibrating through the walls, resonating in their bones. The figures in the shadows halted, their eyes fixed on the group, waiting. "What? What does it mean?" Jamie stammered, his eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape. "It means a sacrifice," Alex said, his voice hollow. "The house wants a sacrifice." The room grew colder, the whispers turning into an indecipherable chant. The shadows closed in, their forms twisting and writhing, reaching for the four friends. "No," Megan gasped, finally snapping out of her trance. "No, we can't." But the voice interrupted, its tone final and unyielding. "One must stay, or all will perish." Silence fell over them, the weight of the house pressing down on them. They looked at each other, eyes wide with fear, realization dawning on them. The house was giving them a choice, a terrible, impossible choice. Time seemed to stand still. Megan, Alex, Jamie, and Ryan exchanged looks, 1,000 unspoken words passing between them.
They had come together, but the house was demanding they leave one behind. The gravity of the situation settled heavily on their shoulders, suffocating them in despair. Ryan stepped forward first, his face a mask of resignation. "We all know the stories," he said, his voice trembling. "Everyone who goes into the Ashen House doesn't come back the same. If they come back at all, this house, it's cursed. It feeds on us." Megan shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, we can't choose. We can't sacrifice someone." Her voice broke, and she fell to her knees, sobbing. "Please, there has to be another way." But the house remained silent, its demand clear. One must stay. Jamie backed against the wall, his eyes wide with terror. "No, I'm not staying here. I won't. I can't." He was shaking, his mind unraveling in the face of the impossible decision before them. Alex stood quietly, his gaze fixed on the floor. He knew they were out of options. There was no escape, no clever way out. The houses had trapped them in a nightmare with no way to wake up. He looked at his friends, his expression sorrowful. Maybe if one of us stays willingly, the others can go. Maybe that's what it wants. "No," Megan screamed, her voice raw with emotion. "We can't let anyone sacrifice themselves. There has to be another way." She looked at each of them, desperation in her eyes. "We can't leave anyone behind. We came here together. We leave together." Ryan's eyes softened, and he took a step toward her. "Megan, sometimes there is no other way. Sometimes we have to face the horror and make a choice. If we don't, we'll all die here." His voice cracked, and he turned away, unable to face the pain in her eyes. The room grew darker, the shadows tightening around them, pressing in. The voice returned, echoing through their minds. "Choose, or all shall perish." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. They knew they had no choice. The house would not let them go until its demand was met. Alex took a deep breath, stepping forward. "I'll stay," he said, his voice steady though his heart was pounding in his chest. "If it means the rest of you can live, I'll stay." "No," Megan whispered, reaching for him, but he pulled away. "Yes," he replied, his eyes locking onto hers. "It has to be this way. It has to end." The shadows recoiled slightly, as if in acknowledgement of his decision. The room grew colder, the air thick with the house's approval. The door behind them creaked open. revealing the moonlit night outside. "Go," Alex urged, his voice breaking, "before it changes its mind."
Go.
Megan, Jamie, and Ryan hesitated for a moment, their hearts torn between staying and leaving. But they knew there was nothing they could do. Alex had made his choice. They turned and fled, racing through the open door and into the night, the whispers trailing after them like a haunting melody. Outside, they collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath. The house loomed behind them, silent and still. It had claimed its sacrifice, and now it rested. Megan looked back at the house, tears streaming down her face. We have to come back for him," she sobbed. "We can't leave him there." Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression grim. "He knew what he was doing, Megan. He saved us. We have to honor that." Jamie nodded, though his eyes were filled with anguish. The house, it won't let him go. It never does. The Ashen House stood in the moonlight, its whispers fading into the night. It had taken its price, and for now, it was satisfied. But the town knew it would not stay silent forever. The house would whisper again, calling to those who dared to listen, drawing them into its shadowy embrace. Remember, dear listeners, some whispers should remain unheard, some mysteries unsolved. The Ashen House still stands, waiting for the next soul to answer its call. Will you be the one who dares to listen? When the whispers beckon,